Hey folks, it's your friend Ashton, and welcome to the Rooted Rebellion podcast, the show that's reshaping the food system from the ground up. Here we are for another week of the Rooted Rebellion podcast. I hope everyone out there is staying sufficiently weird in the ways that delight them, and that we're all soldiering through these final weeks of winter. Thank you so much for continuing to support this podcast, and with it, your local food system. Before we get started with our episode today, I would like to offer you another opportunity to connect with the Rooted Rebellion. Folks, if you haven't already, I urge you to join our email newsletter today. In addition to the latest episode announcements, you're going to receive weekly bonus content that you won't find here on the podcast. That includes education topics of your choosing, as well as a new segment that I'm particularly excited about called Ashton's Food Adventures. And here's what that's going to be. Each Friday, you're going to receive a short snippet about my latest food explorations. That could be trying a new dish, trying my hand in the kitchen, or perhaps a vignette of my time out in the field. And the way I see it, that just gives us the extra opportunity to get to know one another. So I'm going to include the link to sign up in the show notes, and I hope I'll see you in your inbox. Today I'm joined by Brenan of Headwaters RC D, located in Butte, Montana, to discuss the results of a survey that's helping to launch the up-and-coming Butte Community Farm. For those of you located in Montana, you are no stranger to Butte's turbulent mining history. Now, people of Butte are working to make local food more accessible while farming within the context of drastic environmental degradation. This survey, produced by the Butte Community Farm, reflects the barriers to accessing local food in the Butte community, as well as offering potential solutions to how to make that food more readily available. While the participants are from the Butte area, the results of this survey have implications for the nation at large. Here to unpack those survey results is Brenan of Headwaters RC D. Hey, Brenan, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Rooted Rebellion podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited to chat about food.
Hey, the excitement is all mine. I'm really thrilled to discuss this project that you have been a part of. Today, we're going to be discussing a recent survey completed on behalf of the Butte Community Farm. It's helping get this project off the ground. But I think as you listeners are going to hear, this survey has implications that are much bigger than the Butte community. There are going to be some results that apply to every corner of America. So, Brenan, tell us a little bit about your role in this survey.
Yeah, so hello. My name is Brenan. Just a little quick background on what I am. I've been in this role for about 2 years, but I'm a food and ag development center. I know that may be new to a lot of folks. It's something that was created here in Montana to kind of work as an underarm of the Montana Department of Ag. We are nonprofits that have this title, and we specifically look at helping agricultural businesses in any stage of agricultural business, whether it's growth, expansion. As Butte Community Farm, as we'll discuss, is part of that. We are there to essentially help from financial projections to putting in for state grants to putting into USDA grants and anything involved with that. With Butte Community Farm was an idea that kind of fell into my desk, almost a year ago at this point. It was a group that really was looking at an educational side for farms in Butte, where we're situated in Montana, doesn't really allow itself for a full growing season, as many may guess, based on where Montana is located. So Butte Community Farm formed and really wanted to run with this idea that can we educate folks on having a garden, on what to grow, on how to be successful in our area. With that, I just happened to have funds in a grant that we had. I guess backtracking, I work for Headwaters RC D as the organization out of Butte, Montana, to backtrack a little bit. But we had funds and the idea came up to create a survey. And the survey would focus on what are the local food needs of essentially Southwest Montana is what it grew into. And that's kind of my involvement was from a financial side to help out grow this group that had essentially presented itself to my desk out of the blue, out of just my previous work and people I had known.
Well, this survey has been so telling of what the community wants, and something that I admire is that it is truly for the people. I think so often we see in these food operations that we have an outside group coming in and trying to enforce certain ideals or practices that is not necessarily speaking to the desires of the community. So tell us a little bit more about Headwaters and how your organization helps to work on the ground with the people.
Yeah, 100%. So exactly to that regard, I can't say I have any beef with them at all, considering I don't know anything about their operations or people, and I'm sure they're great. But starting my initial idea for food was Cisco is a huge company. Cisco has all the transportation trucks. Most of our restaurants in the area, Cisco. So Headwaters as a nonprofit, we have the freedom, in my opinion, to work with local food, work with local groups. We have contacts from state to federal, and just having those contacts is really nice because there again, we can say that, well, we have Cisco, which is a large conglomerate company that is able to move in just from a financial standpoint. And from a nonprofit standpoint, we have the grassroots efforts to combine the smaller producer that may not have access or the ability to sign on or join with a Cisco type company. So from that perspective, that's where Headwaters has a lot of freedom as a nonprofit that's locally based to be able to talk to those folks that may not be reached by a larger group.
Speaking to the role of Headwaters as a grassroots nonprofit, is it typical to conduct surveys like this? What kind of services do you typically offer your clients?
It's not. It's it's more of a creation of my own idea, and it's actually from my standpoint is our main goal is grant funding, helping folks get grant funding, helping businesses get financing through grants and writing towards grants. But as I started out my job, I realized that grants are very helpful when you get them. A lot of people aren't going to get a grant, just from a standpoint of a lot of them require match funds. A lot of them are difficult. A lot of them are they're a time commitment with reporting, with applications. And so my thought was if we can grow the food system from a grassroots baseline level, we're way better off than trying to get singular individuals grants that may or may not give money to what the necessity is. So that's how Headwaters and especially my role became more grassroots affiliated was working with the people.
Well, at Orion Farmstead, we are all about grassroots. We're all about education, and we're here to serve the people. And these are the kind of organizations that we like to see and we have personally benefited from. So thank you for that work.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So let's dive into the survey a little bit. How did you go
Yeah.
about conducting the survey?
So we went about, and I have to say, I wanna shout out Matea here. She was the creator of Butte Community Farm, and what she did was amazing. We started with this idea that we wanted to get a certain amount of people in the Butte area on the survey. And Matea took that and she ran with it. I mean, she and a group of volunteers were going out almost every weekend and conducting little pop up events to where they were collecting surveys. I think I was only a part of one. I had the time for one. I didn't mention this, but I'm a HUD guy on my other side, another hat I wear. So I work with housing. So Matea ran with this and was able to get 401 responses to this survey. We also did have a couple other campaigns where I shot a commercial, was in a commercial that went across Southwest Montana. We did email campaigns, and we really just tried to get anybody local who ate food in the area, just asking them simple questions like, how do you access local food?
And that is one of the most important questions just to start is the how of the local
Yeah.
food. I think so many aspects of local food do go unaccounted for, yet through transportation or distribution. And so that's where it really helps to have, if you're not growing it yourself, an outside organization to come and help facilitate that. So this survey, I think, really showed a lot of the disconnect. So let's
I would
go
agree.
ahead and address some of these results that you had. To
Yeah.
me, I thought it was, first of all, just a shame that one of the number one results that stood out to me is that 60% of respondents said local food was not accessible to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because I think we can all have pretty sizable numbers come to mind, but then when you have concrete evidence of your community supporting that and coming forth and giving those numbers back, that data,
Yep.
that's a little disheartening,
It is. It's very
especially in a
disheartening.
rural area. So, yeah, what were your initial impressions of that number?
You know, my initial impressions, I guess, just putting the survey together weren't that of shock, but that comes from I was born in Walkerville. I grew up in a little bit in Ashland, Montana, but mostly in Dillon, Montana. And I kind of noticed it just growing up in the area that there wasn't a whole lot of access. I mean, we're one of the biggest. I mean, there's more cows per capita than there is people in the area, and you're hard pressed to pick out a spot where you're like, oh yeah, this is local steak, or this is local steak, or this is a cheaper cut of meat because this is from a local butcher. And because of that, I guess the results I always wondered, where do people get their food? And do they know that they're getting local food at certain spots? And for me, that number wasn't horribly shocking, but at the same time, it totally makes sense for what I've seen just growing up in the area. So maybe that's where I'm coming from, where it's like, okay, unless you're in a big box store like Safeways or your Costco's, or you're in those bigger box stores or at a restaurant, most people probably have no idea where to access a lot of that unless they're going to farmers markets or very local setups shops.
Absolutely, and that does make a lot of sense. As someone from a rural community in Kentucky,
Yeah.
I have experience with this as well. Living on land that is suitable for gardening or even
Yep.
medium scale agricultural production and being surrounded by monocultures and most people getting their groceries at like a gas station convenience store, you know?
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Here
it
it's town
is a
pump. Yep.
disconnect. Yeah. There is a bit of a disconnect there, which leads me to the why. Like, why are we facing this? And I think there are so many answers. We could sit here
There
until we're
is.
blue in the face and name factors. But the
Mhm.
one that is the most
Mhm.
saddening to me, and this isn't shocking, but again, it is difficult to see, is that 70% of your participants claim that local food is unaffordable to them.
Yeah.
How painful is that?
Yeah. Very, very. And I think that goes to the bigger picture that you're kind of hinting at too, where because there's not the transportation, because there's not the community pull for food, meaning a restaurant, if they can get it from Cisco, is going to get it from a cheaper source before they're ever going to pull from a local grower or producer. Because of that, I believe it makes an unaffordable market because they have to increase the margins because that's the only way they can have a profit on the production side. And it's really disheartening because you see stuff like that and you see that, food's not local. And then you have these groups like Butte Community Farm that are trying to fix that. They're taking those results and trying to combat that, but they're going against massive, massive corporations that already have a very strong hold on the food market.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I'm curious, how have you seen this present itself on the back end with Headwaters working
Yeah.
directly with farms and other agricultural food clients? How do you see them competing with these large corporations? Is it even fair to say that they're competing in their communities?
I would say no from my general area. From a competition side, I would say the biggest thing is capacity, where if you're a producer and you start growing, let's say lettuce or microgreens, and you get a deal with Town and Country or with a local shop and you go into that shop, most of the folks are at capacity at that shop because they can take everything you can grow. And from a growth standpoint, I think the competition isn't there because if you are the one producing, you usually have to be the one transporting. You usually have to be the one who's setting up the deals. And just from a workload perspective, they're at capacity because if you're a one-man operation and you don't have the ability to pay for labor, you're already set where you are because you can't grow. And that's what we see on the back end when I'm talking to folks is unless you're a massive operation, a lot of our cattle ranches already are, they already have shipping routes, they already have the ability to move, their family operations that have been around for years. Unless you already have that established, it's very difficult to grow and create competition if you just there's no real pathway or road to get there, I guess.
I think it's confusing for a lot of consumers, and it has been for myself included before I entered this realm of local production and came to understand it a little more
Yeah.
as to why local goods would be more expensive than, something that is produced at a larger scale and farther away when it seems like it would be the opposite.
Yep.
But as you are addressing, there's a complete disproportion in how this is produced and the time that goes into it and how you have to pay yourself as a producer versus paying
Exactly.
cheap labor under the table at some of these larger corporations.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what we're seeing across the board is, you know, you are paying a higher premium for local, but there's a reason for that. It's local. It's going back into somebody's pocket who you've probably passed if you're in a small community and or have talked to. And so yeah, if it's one of those niche markets that unless you're seeking it out, you're getting most of your food just from a large corporation.
Do you believe that a lack of reliable direct transportation impacts your community's members' access to local food?
From a personal standpoint, I think 100%. That's my biggest gripe. Actually, I'll die on that hill where I believe that there is a strong lack of local transportation for most foods. Even if a company gets reasonable size, they still have a hard time transporting most of their food, especially from not from a shipping where because we have shipping routes, we have people that pick up that are semi trucks, but from a small scale small box truck or van to restaurants or store access 100%. We don't have food hubs in our area. We don't have local spots where everybody can go and drop off and pick up. From a transportation side, we you would have to almost do it yourself in our area or have somebody that you know personally who would do it because there is no company that you can just call up tomorrow and say, "Hey, can you transport this to this location?"
I'm really glad that you brought up food hubs. That is something that absolutely revolutionizes the distribution of local foods. Would you care to explain a little bit about food hubs to our listeners who maybe aren't familiar?
Yeah. Yeah, so a food hub is it's essentially bare bones explanation, a building that would be within trucking routes that allows for a concise distribution of goods, meaning if you're a producer, you can send your food directly to the hub. It will be stored in the hub until it is picked up and then transported to its final destination. We've seen these grow through mostly co-op funding, grant funding, state funding. Those are how most of these have gotten off the ground because there is a large price point with them. As you would assume, you have to have storage, you have to follow food safety laws, you have to be able to transport pallets and unload and reload. And so from a funding standpoint, we've only seen these in either community funded or large co-op funded groups. Hopefully that explanation was somewhat informative.
I thought it was great. It helped me, at least with the funding, because that was my next question, just how these projects get funded. And I know that you've spoken about grants helping facilitate
Hmm.
this. And we've talked a little bit about the consumer's own ability to purchase local food.
Yeah.
But that's not the only way to access local food. And one of the most obvious and most local options is to produce food yourself to whatever capacity that you're able. And that is something that the survey does address. So,
Yep.
when you polled your participants about their participation growing their own food, you get some typical responses.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't have space. That is very common.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have time. I don't know how, which really hurts my heart as someone else who also struggles to feed herself with her own garden. So
Oh,
I have a lot of sympathy there. But the one that really struck a chord with me is the response. You had 71 survey takers respond that they're unsure if the soil is safe.
yes.
That is just tragic to me.
It is. It really is tragic. And it goes back to the location. If we took this in the grain belt, that'd be a little bit different. We took it in Butte, and as an old mining town, that is a concern that I think has to be addressed and is a safety concern. I know that Montana Tech, they have professors that specifically look at soil safety and look at what plants you can grow that don't have the heavy metals that are in our soil leach into the food that you consume. And for anybody that doesn't know, Butte, Montana was a large mining city back in the day, late 18 to early 1900s. And through that time, we actually were one of the largest copper producers in the world. Even so, to where we actually had copper lines well before New York City. It was a big city, way bigger than it is now. It's a ghost town compared to what it once was. But hundreds of thousands of people lived here. But because of that, the mines ended up shutting down because of a couple large fires. Those were then sealed off and then filled with water, which resulted in us having a large pit of water called the Berkeley Pit that is now a tourist destination and people can come look. But that leached into the local river, into Silverbow River and the streams around us. So it was the largest EPA cleanup site, and actually one of the biggest restoration projects in history, and they were able to turn it around and really clean up a lot of Silverbow and the surrounding areas to what Butte is today. And because of that, though, the concern is that if you do grow certain vegetables and plants in the area, you're going to have those heavy minerals leach in, especially if you grow it up on the hill here, closer to where the mining activity was.
Man, Butte really is such an interesting place.
It is.
You're speaking to this history, and I wish that our listeners, those who haven't been, pay a visit at some point. I'll never forget being fresh out of undergrad and driving out to Montana and passing the pit for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And to me, it's really aesthetically interesting. So I thought it was cool. I didn't know the
Yeah, it is.
history at the time. But now that I think about it, and the more that I visit Butte, like it really does color so much of the town as the town connects to its food source. And so this
Yeah.
question, it is so important. And unfortunately, I know that so many citizens and communities across the world have to ask this question now. So it's okay if you don't know the answer to this,
Yeah.
but do you know exactly what degree of the soil is safe? Is that a legitimate concern for people looking to grow their own food?
It's funny. There's a lot there was, and there still is a lot of program well, actually, I take that back. I won't say there is a lot, but there was programs back in the day to bring in safe soil, so a soil replacement. There's been discussion around continuing that. At the point where we're at now, I think if you did raised beds, you're 100% fine, obviously, you're off of the soil, you're bringing in your own topsoil, which is probably better in a lot of cases. We're split into 2 spots, so Butte is split into the flats, which is everything kinda south of the interstate, and then the hill, which is everything north. And the hill was where the most of the mining happened. Actually, even where I'm sitting currently, there's thousands and thousands of miles of mining, underground mining paths that were dug out by folks. The soil where I'm currently at on the hill is you would definitely would want to make sure you know what you're growing, what's leaching into your food, and probably replace it with topsoil at this point, even just to be safe. I mean, and this is from a you just don't want to get cancer from something that you're growing in your own garden because of the soil. Everything in the flats, for the most part, should be relatively safe to grow in no matter what, just because of the cleanup project and because most of the leaching has been fixed or remediated over the years, is the best
Well,
way to put
that's comforting, I suppose. If
it.
that's the best that we can get, I will take it. And that is certainly something that needs to be addressed in local food efforts anywhere, as the context of the environment. And unfortunately, there is a degree of degradation, particularly in the soil. But it's important also to be moving forward and to know
100%.
what we have to look to. So there were some really hopeful results that came out of this survey, particularly focusing on how the Butte Community Farm plans to move forward. So the survey shows a lot of interest in the community for adult workshops and educations, like how to with gardening, cooking classes, which I think is an interesting one.
I would
I think
agree.
we've become so far removed from actual whole food ingredients that most of us, let's be honest, don't even know what to do with the ingredients if we have them.
Yep.
Or, we eat from such a small sample size of fresh foods. If it was up to me, I would basically eat like meat and tomatoes and
Y-
potatoes and
Yeah.
kale occasionally. So I don't know what to do with certain vegetables either, and I'll admit that.
Same.
So this is very important, and I think it's something that we can all stand to benefit from, as well as the composting, which I don't want to speak
Yeah.
too much to that, but Brennan, to address your comment about soil replacement and covering with topsoil, it sounds to me like composting would be absolutely essential for folks in this community that are looking to build up soil in their own garden beds.
100%. 100%. I know they've even brought up doing I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's like taking essentially wood pulp and stuff like that. Oh, what is it? Biochar. That's what it is. But that's the word I'm looking for. And so even biochar discussions have been brought up at times just to exactly that, having compost to grow food.
Yeah. And biochar, it's such a great resource and it is so accessible and easy to make as long as you're watching your flame and not getting a little too, I don't know, eager as I want to do. I've made biochar a time or two.
Oh, no kidding. That's awesome.
No, it's fun.
Mm.
It's a good time, I think. I maybe enjoy it for the wrong reasons, but it is
Yeah.
a great asset to any garden bed. And
Mm,
I think it is so powerful for the community as a whole to take this notion of growing their own food. So if
yeah.
local food is too expensive to access, we're having troubles with distribution, obviously.
Yep.
But if people are able to grow food in their own backyard or even in their windowsill, if they're growing herbs, or they even make now like devices to help you grow greens indoors, which I
Yeah. Those
haven't
are
tried.
awesome.
Yeah, I won't speak to those personally, but I'm
Uh,
really interested in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a powerful thing. Food is a weapon. And for the people of Butte who have, let's face it, really been handed the short end of the stick
Mhm.
for decades now due to this mining, this really is such a tool for improvement at the most basic level, feeding themselves, but also moving towards health and regeneration.
Yep. I would agree 100%. And that's what's cool about Butte Community Farm is even the idea of it is just to move forward, figure out the best way to fix a lot of these issues we're seeing, and have an open mind of knowing that maybe the first step may not be the final step of the organization. And what I mean by that is they already are planning to have a few dinners where they have local produce, give people the access to. They're already in talks looking for land to have a community farm, so that way they can start, selling local produce of their own. And then along with that, have educational lines to teach people how to grow, how to start a garden. And what I'm working on in the background is transportation. I've been talking to people, figuring out who's our producers, who's our restaurants, who's our folks that would need that the most, and hopefully combining that with their efforts to start seeing local food on big store shelves is even my thought there, to where we're demanding the market to buy local because that's what people want. And I think, in my opinion, that's the best case scenario is, where your food comes from, the local source of your food. You take pride in it. I mean, it's awesome to have something that is Montana made, as with any state. You take pride in your local breweries and in your local foods and your local meats, and I guess meat is a food, so don't have to add that to the list. But
Amen.
yeah, exactly. But just that's the general idea is with the momentum we now have with this survey, continuing it forward, we're going to try to have another feasibility study specifically for the producer side now. So this was we hit the public side, here's the producer side, and then from there growing the efforts to always have a local food source for people in the area.
That's incredible. And I know that this is not directly tied to Abundant Montana's 33 by 33 initiative, but what perfect timing. There's never a bad time
Yeah,
for local food. But I think that this goes really beautifully hand in hand with the initiative that Abundant Montana is carrying out. And if you aren't familiar, I encourage you to go back and listen to our episode with Aaron Austin, who came on and helped explain this initiative and how Abundant Montana is looking to achieve 33% of the Montanan plate being Montana food. So, really exciting stuff happening. And do we have any other
I would
initiatives
agree.
that we can see from Headwaters coming up that we can all be looking forward to?
So I hate to plug it because it's totally unrelated, but I think they go hand in hand.
It's a place to plug it. Anything you want to plug here and now.
From a HUD side, so HUD, so HUD is a housing and urban development. It is a program directly from the federal government to specifically help folks get the chance to own or get into home ownership is the idea. It's to address housing issues. There is two programs across the state that directly help people get into homes. There is one from NeighborWorks and there's one from Homefront out of Billings, and it's the same deal. It gives up to 30% off of a mortgage, and depending on the county that you sit in, you would fall under NeighborWorks or under Homefront, and from there be able to get up to 30% off a mortgage with deed restrictions. But the reason I bring this up is from a Headwaters side, I'm already working with certain counties to help folks get into housing. And I see it going hand in hand with the food system, meaning we have rural communities that have a hard time getting workforce, have a hard time keeping people in their jobs. And specifically the reason for that is just wage. We've seen an increase overnight in our state, and this is nationwide, so this is a national issue, where housing prices have shot through the roof, food prices have shot through the roof, items of everyday use have shot through the roof, and they all go hand in hand. If you can't live in an area, if you can't afford the food in the area, and you can't afford just basic necessities in an area, well, you either move or you get by with what you can get by with. And because of that, I'm pretty passionate about food and housing, and trying to focus on getting people access to both. So I guess that's my little Headwaters plug. If anybody wants to buy a house, come chat with me, and if anybody wants local food transportation, come chat with me.
As a gal who's currently leasing, that's the best news I've heard today. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I can help you out.
Oh, Brennan, thank you so much for sharing that. And how right you are. I mean, it is the most basic need, food and shelter.
Exactly.
And we can preach all day about wanting people to support these higher ethics, these higher goods. But the bottom line is if you don't have basic security and safety
Yeah.
and a livable wage, you're not going to be concerned about whether or not you're supporting your local food system, nor should you be, frankly.
Exactly. Exactly. You aren't gonna put your garden into a rental,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
can speak from experience. Yeah. Not doing it. Well,
Did
Brennan,
you
thank
really? That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. This is the question I always like to end on with all of our guests. What about helping advocate for your local food system and working with Headwaters to achieve these initiatives? What about that makes you feel most rooted?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, it makes me feel rooted because they're all small steps to a bigger goal. But it gives me a lot of pride. Again, I go back to the fact that I was born here, so I have that kind of stake, but it does give me pride to know that the few glimpses of light I do see of even the Butte Community Farm forming, getting their 501(c) status, of talking to a producer and then helping them, just with general financial budgets, and then turning around and hearing about something they've done. It gives me a lot of pride to know that every step is a step in the right direction just because we're building local business from the ground up. And being a part of that and just having my ear to the ground makes me really happy to have landed and be in the position that I am today, where now people come up and they say, "Hey, I heard you are the person to get in touch to for this, this, and this." And that makes me really happy to know that I was able to do something with the spot that I've grown up in, and possibly have the chance to, when I went to a restaurant, I didn't think any of the food was local. I don't think most of the food was local. And to go to a restaurant now and be like, "Oh yeah, they're getting their meat from here," or "Oh yeah, I know exactly whose vegetables these are, and I know that this is going on here." That gives me great pride and roots me back to exactly where I live.
Well, it's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your time today. And for anyone that wants to stay in touch with Headwaters or this Butte Community Farm Initiative, are there social media pages they can follow? How can they get connected?
Yeah, 100%. So if you want to know anything Headwaters, just go Headwaters RCD. Don't forget the RCD.org, or just type in Headwaters Butte, will pop up. You can check out any of our programs. We do small business. We do brownfields. So brownfields are like blighted areas. Through EPA funding, we can help out with that. Old gas stations come to mind there. Our small business side does any small businesses. It's an SBA that can help out from business planning to loan packaging, anything like that. We also have loan programs where we don't compete with banks. We do gap financing, but definitely Headwaters Butte, Montana is what I throw into Google to find my own site. Another thing is, if you want to type in Southwest 406 Eat Local, that's how you have direct access to Butte Community Farm. That's where their website is held. And if you just type in Butte Community Farm, it should pop up as well if you have interest. Yeah, that's all that I can remember to say off the top of my head.
And that's what is most important. So thank you very much for joining us today. And Brennan, thank you for your work in fighting the food rebellion.
Appreciate it. No, I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.